Okay, so ICT Business Analysis Manager, that's the goal, right?
Hmm.
Super interesting field, huge potential, but those interviews, whoa, they can be a bit much. So we're doing a deep dive into RoleCatcher's guides today, pull out the stuff that really makes a difference, helps you nail those interviews.
Totally. And it's not just what you know, it's how you show it. We'll break down some common questions you might get, give you some approaches that really resonate with hiring managers, and yeah, even show how RoleCatcher's AI can give you a bit of an advantage.
Love it. So first things first, what exactly are we talking about here, an ICT Business Analysis Manager?
Hmm.
You always hear that bridging the gap between IT and business thing, but what's that actually look like day to day?
Think of it like this. You're fluent in both tech speak and business goals. So it's not just understanding what the business needs, it's about seeing how tech can make it happen, translating those business needs into like blueprints for IT systems.
Right, so you've got to have serious communication skills, work with both the tech teams and the business side. And it's good that RoleCatcher mentions this career path is in high demand, good salary potential. That's always nice to hear. But before we're talking salary negotiation, let's talk about tackling some of these interview questions. This first one from RoleCatcher is a classic. What experience do you have with requirements gathering and analysis? Sounds simple enough, but I bet there's more to it.
Oh, absolutely. It's not just about rattling off every project you've worked on. The interviewer is trying to see if you really get the heart of the role. Can you talk to the right people, understand their needs, then turn that into a plan, a structured plan? They don't just want to hear, I'm good at gathering requirements. They want a story. They want to hear how you did it.
So how do you recommend someone answers that? What are interviewers really listening for in those specifics?
So think about a time you had to interview stakeholders, maybe from different departments, each with their own agenda, right? How did you figure out what they actually needed? Not just what they said they needed. And what methods did you use to keep track of all those requirements? Did you use specific software, a certain way of documenting everything? Those are the details that make your answer interesting and memorable.
Makes sense. What if someone hasn't had like a formal business analyst role before? Can they still answer this question in a way that works?
For sure. Think about times you've had to gather information from different places and make it make sense. Maybe it was a group project in school, or you organized a volunteer thing, even planning a family vacation. The key is to highlight those transferable skills. Communication, analysis, turning needs into a plan. Don't be afraid to get creative. Connect the dots for them.
Right. It's all about showing them what you can do, not just what your title was. Now, this next one from RoleCatcher's Guide feels like it's about seeing the bigger picture. How do you ensure project requirements are aligned with business objectives?
It's totally about that big picture thinking. They want to see strategic thinking. Can you grasp the why behind the project, not just the what? You need to show you're thinking about the company's goals. Did you do any research on their competitors, their place in the market? Weaving those details in shows you're engaged, thinking ahead.
So it's not just delivering on time and under budget, but making sure it actually helps the company move forward. What would a strong answer to this question sound like?
Okay, imagine you're telling a little success story. In my last role, I was working on X, seemed pretty straightforward. But then digging deeper into why we were doing it, understanding the company's goal to, say, expand into new markets, I realized we could actually enhance the project by doing Y. This made sure it wasn't just on track, but actually gave us an edge. See the difference?
Huge difference. It's about showing how you think that you take initiative. Now, I know you can't give away all the secrets, but this next question from RoleCatcher seems like a potential landmine. How do you manage stakeholder expectations during the project lifecycle?
Oh, stakeholder management is so key, that question. It's about your people skills, how you navigate different personalities, different priorities. It's where, like, emotional intelligence meets project management.
Right. Where do you even begin with something like that? Managing people's expectations.
It always starts with identifying your stakeholders. Who are the key players,
Right.
right? And what does each one expect from this project? You've got your end users, the project sponsors, maybe even external vendors. They all have skin in the game, but their priorities, they don't always line up.
That sounds like a lot to juggle.
Yeah.
So how do you keep everyone happy and the project on track?
Communication. It's all about setting clear expectations right from the start, giving regular updates, and being really transparent about any roadblocks. And remember, listening is just as important as talking. You've got to hear their concerns and be ready to adjust, to be flexible. Think about a time when a project was veering off course, maybe something unexpected happened, stakeholders disagreed. How did you get it back on track? Those are the kinds of real situations interviewers want to hear about.
All right, so instead of just saying, I'm a good communicator, give them a real example of how you dealt with a tricky situation.
Right. Show those problem-solving skills in action.
Exactly. It could be as simple as, I noticed two stakeholders had totally different ideas about, say, feature X. So I got them in a room together, really listened to what they had to say, and helped them find a compromise. Right? This way, everyone felt heard, but we stayed aligned with the overall goals. Way stronger.
Way stronger. So much better.
Okay, shifting gears a bit. Let's talk about a challenge everyone faces, not just in a work setting. How do you ensure project requirements are delivered on time and within budget?
Time and budget, universal challenges, right. But in the IT world, those projects move so fast. This question is about showing you can plan effectively, anticipate problems, and adapt when things change.
So you can't just say, oh, I'm great at meeting deadlines. What kind of specifics should someone mention to prove they can handle the pressure?
Talk about your process. Do you use a specific project management method? How do you break down big projects into smaller, more manageable chunks? What tools do you use to track everything and spot potential delays? For example, you could say, I'm a big fan of agile methodologies. In my last role, we used Scrum to break the project into sprints, which really helped us stay flexible and adapt to changes quickly. Ultimately, we delivered on time and within budget, even with a few surprises along the way.
Nice, that's a good example. But what about those unexpected things that always seem to pop up? How do you deal with those curveballs?
That's where risk management comes in. A good business analyst, they can spot those potential risks early on and have a backup plan ready to go. Think of a time when a project hit a snag, maybe a vendor was late, user requirements changed out of the blue. Share how you adjusted the plan to minimize the impact on time and budget. It's all about showing you can think on your feet, get creative under pressure.
Right. It's not about pretending things won't go wrong. It's about showing you can handle it when they do. And speaking of things going wrong, let's talk about risk management. RoleCatcher's Guide has this question. How do you identify and mitigate project risks?
Feels like a natural next step from what we were just talking about. It's one thing to adjust on the fly, but what about seeing those problems coming before they even hit? Being proactive, that's the key. And identifying risks, it's not just about making a list of what could go wrong, the obvious stuff. You got to think about different categories, right? Technical risks, business risks, even those external factors like, oh, the market suddenly shifts or some new regulation pops up. Use what you know about the company, the industry, even what's happening in the world to get a full picture.
Okay, so you've got this list of what ifs.
Yeah.
Then what?
Yeah.
How do you figure out which ones need the most attention?
You're right. Not all risks are equal. Analysis and prioritization are key here. You've got to assess how likely is each risk to actually happen, and if it does, what's the impact, right? Maybe you use a risk matrix or some similar tool to really visualize it, prioritize those potential roadblocks. This helps you focus your energy on what matters most.
Makes sense. Focus on the big stuff. So say you've zeroed in on a high priority risk. What are some concrete examples of those mitigation strategies you could talk about in an interview?
Well, it always depends on the specific risk, of course. But here's a few ideas. For a technical risk, maybe you've got a backup system ready to go, or a plan to bring in a specialist if needed. For a business risk, maybe you build some flexibility into the timeline or budget from the get-go. And for those external factors, sometimes it's about having a rock-solid communication plan, keep everyone in the loop, and adjust as you go.
Sounds like communication and planning, they're key in all of this. Being ready for those what-if scenarios can really make or break things.
It really can. Now let's change gears a bit, talk about quality. RoleCatcher asks, how do you ensure project requirements are of high quality? Seems pretty straightforward, but something tells me there's more to it than meets the eye.
Right. You can't just say, I make sure things are good.
Yeah.
How do you actually prove you have a system for quality, throughout the whole project?
It starts with how you get those requirements in the first place. Are you using different techniques to make sure you're getting a complete picture, an accurate one, and documenting everything? It's got to be clear, concise, no room for confusion. Good documentation can save a lot of headaches later on, believe me.
Oh, I've seen it firsthand. Unclear requirements equal confusion and delays, for sure. So it's not just writing it down. It's got to be well written, easy to understand.
100%. And it's not a solo thing either. How are you checking those requirements with the stakeholders? Using prototypes, mock-ups, user stories, that kind of thing, to get everyone on the same page.
And testing, that's a big part of quality, right?
Huge. It's not enough for it to just look good on paper. It's got to actually work in the real world, as intended.
So high quality means technically sound, but also meets the needs of the business and the people using it. Big picture stuff.
Exactly. And don't forget about always getting better. Are you getting feedback throughout the project? Using that to fine-tune those requirements, make adjustments as you go, showing that commitment to constant improvement, that tells me you really care about the best possible result.
That's a great point. It's not a one and done. You're always checking, refining. Now, this next question from RoleCatcher takes some serious foresight. How do you ensure project requirements are scalable and adaptable to future changes?
Such a good question. Because the business world moves fast, and technology, even faster.
Oh.
This question, it's about showing you can think ahead, build systems that can grow and change with the business. Long-term thinking is key here.
So, not just today's needs, but thinking about what they might need a year, even 5 years down the line. How do you even start to get your head around that?
You've got to understand where the business is going and the industry as a whole. Are they growing like crazy? Are there new technologies on the horizon that could disrupt their whole model? For example, let's say you're working with a company that's experiencing rapid growth. You wouldn't want to design a system that can only handle their current user base, right? You need to think about how it could scale to accommodate potentially thousands, maybe even millions of new users.
It's like you're building a house, but you're leaving room to add on, new wings, extra floors as the family grows.
I like that analogy. And you also need to consider how that system might have to adapt to changes in their business strategy or, external factors. A modular design where you break the system down into smaller, interconnected parts that can make it easier to add new features, swap out outdated tech, or scale specific areas as needed.
It's really interesting how important it is to think beyond the immediate project. Always keep that bigger picture in mind.
It's essential, and that includes being aware of industry standards. RoleCatcher's Guide, it also asks, how do you ensure that project requirements are aligned with industry best practices and standards?
Right. Makes sense. Why is it so important to be in tune with those standards?
Aligning with industry best practices and standards is crucial for a few reasons. Firstly, it ensures you're building on a solid foundation, taking advantage of all that collective knowledge and experience of everyone in your field. It helps you avoid common mistakes, be more efficient, and ultimately deliver a much stronger, more reliable solution.
It's like following a recipe that's been tested and perfected over time, much more likely to end up with a delicious cake that way, right? But with all these standards and best practices constantly changing, how do you even stay up to date?
It's all about continuous learning, my friend. Industry publications, those professional organizations, online forums, conferences, these are your friends. And never underestimate your network. Talk to other professionals, go to industry events, and never be afraid to ask questions.
Love that. Now, we've covered gathering requirements, analyzing those risks, ensuring quality, staying current. But none of it really matters if you can't communicate effectively, right? RoleCatcher highlights this with the question, how do you ensure that project requirements are communicated effectively to all stakeholders?
Communication is everything. You're like a translator, bridging the gap between the tech team and the business folks. You need to be able to explain complex tech stuff in a way anyone can understand. And on the flip side, translate business needs into clear, actionable, technical requirements.
So it's not just being a good communicator in general. It's about adjusting your style for different people, right?
Yeah.
Speaking different languages depending on who you're talking to.
Exactly. A software developer needs different details than a CEO, Understanding your audience, how tech savvy they are, their priorities, even how they like to communicate, that's crucial. And it's not just what you say, it's how you say it. Your tone, body language, even how well you listen, it all plays a role.
It's about building that trust and rapport, making people feel heard, understood, and confident in you.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And don't forget about choosing the right way to communicate. Face-to-face meetings, emails, instant messaging, project management software, documentation, they all have their place. A good business analyst knows which tool is right for each situation and how to tailor their message accordingly.
Be strategic, be intentional, make sure the right info gets to the right people at the right time. What are some ways to make sure communication stays on track throughout a project's entire life cycle?
One of the most important things is setting up clear communication channels and expectations right from the start. Who needs to know what? How often will updates be given? What's the best way to share feedback or raise concerns? Having those guidelines in place helps avoid confusion, keeps the project moving smoothly.
Like a communication roadmap for the whole team? Everyone knows where they're going and how to get there.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to over-communicate, especially when it comes to big decisions or changes in direction. Better to share too much than too little. always.
Great advice. Now, we've talked a lot about the skills and experience you need to succeed as an ICT Business Analysis Manager. But let's switch gears for a moment and talk about how RoleCatcher's AI tools can help you in your job search. Even with all the right answers, sometimes just getting your foot in the door can feel impossible.
Oh, I agree. RoleCatcher's AI can be a game changer in today's job market. Their CV resume builder, it's like having a personal branding expert in your corner, someone to help you create a resume and cover letter that really highlight the skills and experience that matter most for each specific job you apply for.
I know a lot of people struggle with that, tailoring their resume for every job. How does RoleCatcher make that easier?
Their AI analyzes the job description, picks out those keywords and phrases the hiring manager is looking for, and suggests ways to work them into your resume and cover letter naturally. No more awkward stuffing.
That's amazing. Like a secret weapon to get your application noticed.
Exactly. And it's not about tricking the system, it's about making sure your real skills and experience shine through in a way that resonates with both the algorithms and, the human on the other side.
So, putting your best foot forward, showing your true potential. Speaking of which, I know how nerve-wracking interview prep can be. Can RoleCatcher's AI help with that too?
For sure. Their interview guides are awesome. They provide insights and example answers tailored to different roles and industries. But here's the really cool part. You can actually practice your answers using their AI-powered video analysis tool.
Wait, so you can record yourself answering interview questions and get AI feedback on your delivery, content, everything.
Yep. It's like having a personal interview coach in your pocket. Seriously. You can see how you come across on camera, spot any nervous habits you might have, and get personalized feedback on your answers.
Wow, it's like having a dress rehearsal before the big day.
Exactly. And the more you practice, the more confident you'll be.
This is all fantastic information. We've covered a lot today, from understanding what an ICT Business Analysis Manager does to tackling those tough interview questions with confidence. But before we wrap up, I want to circle back to something you mentioned earlier, continuous learning.
Absolutely. Technology is always changing, and the best business analysts, they're lifelong learners, always looking to expand their skills and knowledge.
So important. So for our listeners out there who are ready to either start or level up their careers as ICT Business Analysis Managers, what are some ways they can stay ahead of the curve and set themselves up for success in this field?
It really is. So many resources out there, online courses, industry certifications, webinars, conferences, even just staying up to date on the latest news and trends. The key is to be proactive, make time for it, even if it's just 30 minutes a day.
Absolutely. It's an investment in yourself, in your future.
Right.
And it's not always about formal learning either, right? Reading industry publications, following thought leaders on social media, attending meetups and networking events, those are all super valuable.
For sure. And honestly, hands-on experience is unbeatable. Personal projects, volunteering for new challenges at work, it's all about applying those skills, expanding your knowledge base, and building up your portfolio. Those real-world examples, they speak volumes.
Totally. Be open to new opportunities, push yourself a little bit, get out of that comfort zone.
Exactly. And as you gain experience, don't keep it all to yourself. Mentoring others, writing articles, giving presentations, those all solidify your expertise, help you become a thought leader in the field.
Sharing your knowledge, it's a win-win. Helps others, deepens your own understanding, and builds your professional network.
You got it. And at the end of the day, remember this, a career in ICT business analysis, it's incredibly rewarding. You're not just working with technology, you're using it to solve real problems, make businesses better, have a real impact.
That's what makes this feel so cool. It's that intersection of technology, business, and human interaction. It's about understanding the why behind the what, right? And using your skills to bridge that gap between ideas and actual solutions.
Perfectly said. With the right prep, the right mindset, and tools like RoleCatcher, anyone can thrive in this field. It's dynamic, it's rewarding, it's got it all.
Couldn't agree more. So to all our listeners out there who are ready to launch or level up their careers as ICT Business Analysis Managers, embrace that continuous learning, hone those skills, show them what you've got, and never stop exploring those possibilities. And remember, RoleCatcher is there every step of the way.
Absolutely. Good luck out there.
And that's a wrap on another deep dive. We'll be back next time with another exciting topic. Until then, keep learning, keep growing, keep aiming for those goals.